All right, let's look at how to create an invoice. We're going to go over to the plus button, select invoice, and we've got the main invoice form that opens up. And we have to select a contact. Every invoice must have a contact. This is the person that you're invoicing. So let's say Tim Cook and at Apple. Now it could be that the contact has multiple accounts, so that's why you would select the account. But of course, the account is not required. Only the contact is required. You'll notice it also pulled in the email address and the billing address when we selected the contact. Okay, so we'll give it a subject, important invoice, and we've got the owner, so this is the person sending the invoice. You can put in a PO number, currency, the issue date, the due date, say 30 days, or you could pick, a custom date if you need to. Let's just say 30 days. And you'll notice for invoices, there are 6 different things that you can invoice in Ravetree: expenses, projects, retainers, service items, time logs, and work items. So let's click off on most of these. Let's just say we want to send an invoice for some service items and time logs. So with service items, we'll click here and we can add a service item. And this is pulling from the service item database that you create in the admin section. So let's say we're doing a website audit, and you can put in some details. Here are the details. And oops, do that. Okay, and then you'll notice you've got just all the basic information here. Of course, you can add as many service items as you need. But let's look at time logs. I think time logs is going to be a little bit more interesting. So we click here, and you'll notice that right away we've got, well, initially we don't have anything selected, but we can choose what we want to pull in by selecting the status. So these are like filters, essentially. So we want to select, let's see if there's approved time logs. It looks like there are none. And what this is doing is it's saying pull in approved time logs for the selected account. So if we had not selected the account, it would have just looked at the contact. But because we have an account, that's sort of what has taken precedence over the filter. But let's say unapproved. Okay, it looks like we do have some unapproved time logs for the selected account. And we've got quite a few as we can scroll down here. Now, one thing that you can do is you can filter the results by project. So if we look carefully here, we've got the project, and a lot of these are for the same project. But as we scroll down, we'll notice that there are actually a few different projects here, and we can choose to filter out by project. So you might be the project manager for a particular project, and then there's a different project manager for another project for the same account. And you only want to send the invoice for your project. So client web application. And although we still have a lot, it did filter out the ones that were not linked to that project. Okay, and you can select multiple projects as well. You can also filter when the time logs were entered. So instead of pulling in all the time logs, you could do like last quarter. Looks like maybe there's just one. Or we could do custom. And let's pick a custom range here. And we're going to go pretty far back just because we have some old data in here, but this will demonstrate the possibilities. Okay, so now that we filtered between this date range for that project, okay, we've got still a handful, but not nearly as many as we had before. And we can see that these were all logged by, it looks like the same person, the same member, but they were logged against different teams. We've got at least a couple different teams here. So one of the things that you can do is you can control the layout of the line items. So right now we're showing all the line items. In this case, all of the time logs that fit the filters up here. And you could have hundreds of time logs, and maybe you want to show those on the invoice, but maybe you don't. So you have these other options, and these are really powerful. One is aggregate. So what it's doing is, in this case, it's aggregating all the time logs by date. So any time log on that particular date, You may have just one. There might be several. It will roll up all the total values and give you one line item for that date. You could do it by, let's say, work item. So now we can see we've got, it looks like 4 different work items that we log time against, and it has given us kind of like an aggregation for those time logs. We could do it by work role. Looks like there's a couple roles. So it's kind of a nice way to simplify your invoice. Now we could also group the results. Now with grouping, what it's doing is it's still showing every single time log. It's just grouping them by whatever the grouping option is that you've selected. So date, here you can see we've got different dates, and it looks like most of these just have one time log per day. But let's say, work item. Okay, so we still have those 4 work items. There's one for that work item, but as you can see with this one, it looks like we've got maybe 6 different time log entries for that particular work item. And actually what this is saying just is that these are ones that did not have a work item, in fact. So let's do work role. Designer had a handful. Scrum Master had a handful of time logs. So anyway, just different ways that you can pull those time logs in with filters, control the layout. You can also control the fields that show up, and this is also really important. We've had a lot of people that had asked for this over the years, and now let's say you do not want to show the project or the member, maybe the work item or even the team. You might not care about those things. Your customer may not want to see all that information. So now we're just showing the date and the description. We can add additional details if we need to. And furthermore, you can control the sorting. So you can sort it in all kinds of different ways. And right now we're sorting by the total, ascending. You can do a descending. So you've got a lot of ways to control how this information is displayed. And then let's just close this. So now you can see that we've got a service item, and we've got some time logs, and we can collapse these just to get a nice summary right there. We've got the totals. We could also choose, let's go over here and let's apply a discount. So we've added a discount, and you can see that it puts that in. In fact, if we open up the time logs again, we can see the discount applied to each time log entry. All right, so lastly, you could add a tax and say New York sales tax. This tax list is coming from the admin billing section where you can specify all the different taxes that you may have. So you can apply the tax. And if you go down to the individual line items, you can click to choose if you want to apply that tax or not. So we've added one to the service item, and it could be that that tax needs to be applied to certain things but not others. So you've got a lot of control over how the taxes are applied. Of course, that information shows up down here. And then you can obviously save the invoice, or you could save it, mark it as sent, or you could save it and actually send the invoice, in which case it would send it to that email address. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just save this invoice. And there we go. So we've got the invoice, and this is the invoice as viewed from within Ravetree. Okay, so whenever you want to pull up that invoice, you can view this kind of nice version here. But if you want to view the PDF, then you can go there, view PDF. It'll open up a new tab. And then here you've got the PDF version of the invoice. This is what would be sent to your client. And as you can see, we've got it, everything is grouped. So instead of just throwing all the different line items together, you've got this nice grouping, service items, and you've got time logs. If you had expenses that you were invoicing for, they would be in their own kind of separate block. And you've got all the details here. So it's very, very easy for your customer to see all the details. And Yeah, so hopefully that gives you a broad overview of invoicing in Ravetree.